He climbed up the tilted hull, pulling her behind him. The hatch was jammed, but he used his arm to pry it open. A cloud of cold gas hissed out, followed by silence. Inside, the corridors were dark and filled with drifting snow. Lights flickered weakly on the ceiling. Frozen bodies of soldiers were scattered around, faces still locked in fear. Ryan pulled the Queen into a side room that looked like an old med bay. Most of the equipment was dead, but one heater flickered with a faint orange glow. He set her near it, adjusting the heat flow. This might keep us alive for a while. Ilara watched him move around, salvaging supplies. You served on one of these ships once, didn't you? He paused. Yes, not by choice. What was it like? Being their slave? Ryan hesitated, then shrugged. They told us what to think, when to fight, when to sleep. We didn't dream. We didn't ask questions. We were tools. She looked down. And yet you saved me, your enemy. He looked at her directly. Maybe I was tired of being a tool. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the hum of the weak heater filled the silence. Later, Ryan searched the corridors for food and batteries. The ship creaked under his weight, ice cracking under every step. He passed a wall covered in frost where someone had written a message before dying. No one comes back. He took a deep breath and kept walking. In the storage bay, he found 2 oxygen tanks and a half-functioning power cell. As he bent to pick them up, a low sound echoed through the corridor, like metal grinding. He froze. The sound came again. Then a faint red light blinked inside the wall. Ryan frowned. He wiped the frost off the panel and saw something move behind the metal. An old security drone. Its single red eye came to life. Then another, and another. 3 drones activated at once, emerging from their hibernation pods. Their scanners turned toward him, red beams sweeping across the corridor. Unauthorized presence detected, one of them said in a cold, robotic tone. Ryan grabbed the nearest pipe and swung it just as the first drone lunged. Sparks flew as the blow connected, breaking its eye lens. But the other 2 opened fire. Small plasma bolts slicing through the air. One hit his shoulder. He grunted but didn't stop. He charged forward, smashing another drone against the wall. The third one fired again, burning through his side armor. Come on, he shouted, slamming the pipe through its core. The machine screeched and fell apart, smoke rising from its body. Ryan stood there, chest heaving, surrounded by silence again. Then he heard Ilara's voice faintly through the comm. Ryan, what's happening? Old defense systems, he replied. They think we're intruders, she paused. Are you hurt? He laughed softly. Nothing new. He gathered what he could and returned to the medbay, dragging the supplies behind him. His armor smoked and blood dripped from under the metal joints. When he entered, Ilara's eyes widened. You fought them alone? He set down the oxygen tanks. It's quiet now. You could have left me, she said quietly. You could have taken those tanks and gone. He looked at her, surprised. Left you? Why would I do that? Because that's what people do when they want to survive, she whispered. Ryan shook his head slowly. Maybe I'm not people. Hours passed. The heater flickered, casting dim orange light on their faces. Ryan repaired his damaged circuits while Ilara rested. At one point she asked, Do you ever think about freedom? Ryan looked up. Freedom? Yes, if you could choose your own life. What would you do? He smiled faintly. I don't know. I've never had a choice before, she nodded slowly. Maybe. You deserve one. For a moment her eyes softened and he could see not a queen, but a woman who understood what it meant to be trapped. Before he could answer, the floor trembled beneath them. Dust and ice rained from the ceiling. Ryan jumped to his feet. What now? He muttered. The tremors grew stronger. The sound of cracking metal echoed through the corridors. Ryan ran to the window slit and looked outside. A massive fissure had opened in the ground. Red light pulsed beneath the ice. Ilara's voice shook. Is it another explosion? Ryan stared, his voice quiet but grim. No, something's waking up. The red light brightened, spreading like veins through the ice field. The hum of machines echoed from below, deep and rhythmic, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Ryan turned back to the Queen. We have to move. Now. He lifted her onto the sled again, his body trembling from exhaustion but his will unbroken. The corridor behind them cracked open, swallowing frozen bodies into the dark. As they pushed out of the wreck and into the blizzard once more, the red glow beneath the ice followed them, closer, brighter, Alive. Ryan glanced at the Queen, his breath fogging inside his helmet. Whatever that is, he said, it's not friendly. The Queen's voice was faint but steady. Then we face it together. And with that, the two broken souls, one a slave, one a fallen queen, vanished into the storm as the frozen world beneath them began to roar. The storm was not wind anymore. It was alive. Red lights crawled under the ice like veins, and the ground trembled with the heartbeat of something ancient. The frozen world had woken from its long sleep. Ryan pulled the sled faster, his boots sinking into the softening ground. Each breath came out as white mist inside his cracked helmet. The Queen lay on the sled behind him, her body weak, her voice shaking. Ryan, what's happening? He didn't slow down. Machines, he said. Old ones. War relics, maybe thousands of years old. We woke them up. The ground cracked open behind them with a sound like thunder. Ryan turned his head and saw them. Dark shapes rising from beneath the ice. Drones. Huge and jagged, covered in frost and rust, but still burning with red energy. Their eyes glowed like blood stars, and their claws scraped against the metal bones of the planet. Alara gasped. Ancient sentinels. Ryan pulled her sled behind a fallen ship wing, crouching low. The machines scanned the horizon, their sensors sweeping in wide red arcs. The light passed over the wing, missing them by inches. Ryan whispered, "They're searching for power, movement, maybe survivors." Ilara's voice was soft but trembling. "You can't fight them. Not all of them." He didn't answer. His hand tightened on the broken steel rod he had been using as a weapon. The metal was dented and half melted, but still sharp. Another rumble shook the air, deeper this time. The largest drone turned its head, its red eye locking onto a distant glow, the wrecked destroyer they had just escaped. A moment later, it fired. A beam of white fire tore through the wreck, splitting it apart like paper. The explosion threw flames and shards into the sky. Heat washed over Ryan and the Queen even from afar. Ilara whispered, "They're destroying everything." "Yes," Ryan said quietly, eyes reflecting the flames. "Anything that moves, anything that lives." He knew they couldn't hide forever. The ice field was wide and empty. The drones would find them soon. They needed shelter, somewhere deep, underground. He looked toward a distant ridge where the ice met black rock. There might be caves there. "Hold on," he said, gripping the sled's edge. Then he ran, his body screamed in pain. His cybernetic legs stuttered and sparked. His vision blurred. But he didn't stop. He dragged the sled through snow and fire, each step echoing in the silence between explosions. Behind him, one of the drones noticed movement. It turned, scanning the field. Its red beam found them. Target detected. Ryan cursed and pushed harder. Plasma blasts struck the ice around them, melting it into boiling steam. Shards of glowing rock flew through the air. One blast hit close enough to throw Ryan off his feet. He hit the ground hard, sliding across the ice. The sled flipped, sending Ilara rolling beside him. "Ryan," she shouted, coughing through the smoke. He crawled to her, shielding her body with his own. His metal arm was bent, wires hanging loose. His armor was cracked open. She looked up at him through the shattered glass of her visor. "Leave me," she whispered. "You can still escape." He stared at her, his eyes glowing dim blue through the ash. "You don't give orders anymore, Your Majesty." Before she could answer, another plasma bolt hit nearby, opening a fiery crater. Steam swallowed them both. Ryan lifted her again and ran through the smoke, coughing, blinded by the heat. His skin burned where the armor had split. His system screamed warnings in his head, but he kept going. At last they reached the ridge. A hole gaped in the rock, a tunnel made by an old mining machine long ago. He carried the Queen inside just as another blast struck the cliff behind them. Rocks fell, sealing the entrance with fire and dust. Inside, the tunnel was dark and silent. Only the sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere deep inside. Ryan fell to his knees, his strength finally gone. The sled scraped to a stop beside him. Ilara looked at him, her voice shaking. "You're bleeding. You can't go on like this." He leaned against the wall, laughing softly. "I've said that before." Her eyes glistened. She reached out with her hand and touched his shoulder. "You shouldn't have saved me." He met her gaze. "Maybe you're right, but I did." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and quiet. They rested in the darkness for a while. Ryan tore strips from his uniform and wrapped them around the burns on his chest. His body trembled each time he moved. Ilara watched him, her face pale in the dim light of a flickering lamp he'd found. "You were made by them, weren't you?" she asked softly. "The Empire built you to obey." The sky above the dead world was broken. Shattered ships floated like bones in space, glowing faintly under the cold light of a dying sun. Sparks and debris drifted between the wrecks, each piece a memory of war. Silence ruled here. No radio signals, no life signs, no hope. But deep inside one of those torn metal bodies, something moved. A man, half human, half machine, opened his eyes. His name was Ryan, a slave soldier of the Galactic Empire. His body was built for battle. Metal limbs, steel ribs, eyes that could see heat and light through smoke. But now even his strong body was failing. His ship had been destroyed in the last attack and most of the crew was gone. Fire and vacuum had taken them all. Ryan tried to stand, but his leg servo whined and locked. Sparks jumped from his shoulder. He looked around. The corridor was twisted, crushed. Half of it opened into space. If not for his inner oxygen tanks, he would already be dead. He pressed a hand against his chest and whispered to himself, "Still working. For now." He looked through the crack of the hull. Broken ships drifted nearby, chunks of armor shining like ghosts. Somewhere out there was the enemy, an alliance ship that had attacked their fleet. But it didn't matter anymore. Everything was gone. Then through the static of his broken comms he heard it, a faint voice, weak, struggling. "Help, please. Anyone alive?" Ryan froze. It wasn't a command signal from the Empire. It wasn't one of his kind. It was soft, trembling, a woman's voice. He turned the receiver dial, adjusting the signal. The voice came again, clearer this time. "This is Queen Ilara of the Alliance. Escape pod down. Cannot move. Anyone, please." The Queen. Ryan's eyes widened. He knew that name. Every soldier did. The Paralyzed Queen, they called her. Leader of the human worlds that defied the Empire. She had escaped their traps again and again. The bounty on her head was higher than the cost of a fleet, and now she was here near the wrecks, helpless. Ryan could report it. If he sent a signal, maybe the Empire would hear it. Maybe they would save him, reward him. But then he looked around again. His ship's antenna was gone. His systems were failing. No one was coming for him. He stared out at the broken stars. "So it's just us," he whispered. A memory flickered in his mind, his commander's last words before the explosion. "You are property, Ryan. You don't choose who to save." He gritted his teeth. For the first time in his life, he wanted to break that rule. Using the last bit of power, Ryan pushed open the emergency hatch. The cold hit him like a hammer. His suit sealed instantly, but frost formed on the metal around his jaw. He climbed out into the emptiness, pulling himself along the twisted hull with magnetized boots. The voice continued to echo through his comms, weaker each time. "Help, I can't." "Move." Ryan followed the signal. He leapt from one wreck to another, dragging a broken cable behind him as a tether. The silence of space pressed against his mind, heavy and endless. After what felt like hours, he saw it. A small escape pod half buried in the ice of a shattered moon below. It flickered with dying lights. He aimed his thrusters and dived. The landing was rough. The surface cracked beneath him, sending shards of ice into the black sky. He slid to the pod's side. The outer shell was dented, half melted. Through the frost-covered glass he saw her, a woman in royal armor. Her face pale, her eyes closed. Her lower body didn't move. He slammed his fist against the pod's door. It didn't budge. The emergency lock was fused. Ryan ripped a pipe from the wreck beside him and smashed it again and again until the glass cracked and broke apart. Cold air hissed out. The Queen gasped awake, coughing weakly. Her eyes darted to him. Metal face, glowing eyes, the mark of a slave soldier on his chest. "Stay away," she said, trying to crawl back, but her legs didn't respond. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ryan said, his voice low but calm. "You're one of them," she hissed. "An imperial slave." He didn't deny it. "Yes, but right now we're both dying." "You can hate me later." She looked at him, confused. He tore off a piece of metal panel and slid it under her, making a makeshift sled. Her breath fogged inside her cracked helmet. He connected an oxygen tube from his own tank to hers. Her eyes widened. "You'll suffocate." He only said, "I've had worse." Ryan began dragging her across the ice, pulling the metal sled toward a distant wreck. His magnet boots sparked with every step. The Queen's lips trembled as she watched him struggle through the frozen wind. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered through the comm. He didn't answer at first. He focused on the horizon. Then he said softly, "Because someone should." A small smile flickered on her face before she closed her eyes again. The storm grew stronger. Ice shards cut through his suit. Power readings dropped. The oxygen warning light blinked red. His systems tried to force him to rest, but he ignored it. Every few meters he stopped and looked at her. She was shivering. He adjusted the oxygen flow, gave her his body heat by holding her close against his chest armor. His circuits whined in protest. Above them, lightning danced across the shattered sky. The broken ships looked like giant skeletons against the storm. Ryan whispered to himself, "Just a little farther." Suddenly, the ground beneath him rumbled. A deep explosion echoed from somewhere far away. He turned. One of the wrecked ships had caught fire. Its reactor core was breaking apart. A bright flash filled the air and a wall of burning debris came flying toward them. "Hold on," Ryan shouted. He pushed the sled behind a broken fin of metal and covered the Queen with his own body. The explosion hit a moment later. Fire, light, and shards of steel tore through the air. When the noise faded, everything went dark again. Ryan's sensors flickered back to life. Half his armor was gone. His arm was twisted but still working. He looked at the Queen. She was unconscious but breathing. He smiled weakly. "Still alive. Good." He dragged her out from behind the wreckage. The stars above were dimmer now, covered by dust clouds. His power was nearly gone, but he kept walking. One slow step at a time. The broken hull beneath them groaned and cracked. The wind howled, carrying the smell of burned metal. At last, he saw a faint red light blinking through the snow. A beacon. Maybe another wreck, maybe shelter. He pulled the Queen closer and whispered, "We're not done yet, Your Majesty." The beacon grew brighter as he approached, reflecting on the frozen ground like a blood moon. The ice beneath them trembled again, splitting open with a low roar. Ryan turned sharply. Through the cracks, faint red lights flickered from below, the shapes of machines buried under the ice. He didn't know what they were, but he felt their movement. Something was waking up. He lifted the Queen higher and whispered to himself, "Not now, not yet." But the lights below grew stronger, spreading in circles under the ice. The ground shook harder, cracks racing toward them like lightning. Ryan's eyes widened. "Stay with me," he said, holding her close as the world began to break apart again. The last thing he saw before the ice exploded beneath them was the red glow of old war machines rising from the depths. And somewhere, in the cold wind between stars, the broken sky burned once more. The moon's surface was a graveyard of frozen metal. Cracked ship pieces stood like the bones of giants under a dull red sky. Every gust of wind carried dust and shards of ice that cut like knives. Ryan opened his eyes again. He was lying on his back, half buried in frost. For a moment he couldn't move. His systems flickered in and out, showing red warnings. Oxygen low, temperature critical, right arm malfunction. Then he remembered. The Queen. He sat up fast, pain shooting through his chest. The sled was still there, half covered in snow. Queen Alara lay on it, her face pale, her armor cracked. A thin layer of ice had formed over her lips. Ryan crawled to her side. "Come on, don't die now," he whispered, brushing the frost from her visor. Her eyes opened slowly, glassy but alive. "Where are we?" she murmured. "Still on the moon," he said. "We fell through the ice during the explosion. But we're not dead yet." Alara tried to move, but her legs stayed still. A flash of pain crossed her face. I can't feel them," Ryan nodded. "Your spine implant took damage. You're paralyzed from the waist down." She turned her head away, breathing hard. "So, I really am broken." Ryan looked at her. This woman, once the most powerful voice in the galaxy, now trapped in her own body. He saw no crown, no throne, only a human who refused to die. He adjusted her oxygen mask, making sure it sealed tight. "You're not broken," he said. "You're still breathing." "That's enough." Ryan scanned the horizon. A shadow moved in the distance, one of the crashed ships. The hull looked mostly intact. Maybe it had shelter or working power cells. He secured the Queen on the sled again. His cybernetic arm sparked but obeyed as he pulled her across the frozen field. The ground groaned under his boots, thin cracks spreading under the weight. Elara watched him silently. Her eyes softened, filled with something new, something she had never felt toward a slave soldier. After an hour of dragging, they reached the wreck. The letters on the side were half melted, but Ryan recognized them. Aegis 9, one of the Empire's destroyers. Empire ship, the Queen said with disgust. You're bringing me to my enemy's grave. Rion gave a tired smile. Right now it's just a pile of metal. Metal can't hate anyone. Ryan nodded. They called us hybrids. Soldiers with no past, no future, only missions. And yet here you are, she said. Defying everything they programmed into you. He smiled faintly. Maybe something broke inside me. Maybe that's what freedom is, being broken in the right way. Elara's eyes softened. You're not broken, Rian. You're the most human person I've met. He didn't know what to say to that. For a long moment there was only silence, the quiet hum of old metal cooling around them. Then the ground shook again. Dust rained from the ceiling. The red glow returned, faint but spreading through the cracks in the rock. Rion stood gripping his weapon. They found us. How? She whispered. They can sense heat signatures. We're still alive, that's enough. The tunnel behind them began to crack open, light seeping in. The sound of metal claws scraping against stone filled the air. Rion looked around quickly. At the far end of the tunnel was an old shaft leading upward, probably to the surface or maybe another wreck. He picked up the sled, breathing hard. We climb, Elara shook her head. You'll never make it. I will. He dragged her toward the shaft, climbing the steep incline. His boots slipped on loose rocks, his arm shaking with effort. Sparks flew each time he grabbed a jagged wall for support. Behind them, the first drone broke through the rock, roaring like a beast. Its eye glowed red, its claws tearing through the tunnel. Elara screamed, Ryan, hurry! He gritted his teeth and threw himself forward. At the top of the shaft was a small hatch, part of another wreck buried long ago. He slammed his fist into it until it cracked open. Light poured in from above, the faint glow of a dying sun. He pushed the Queen through first, then pulled himself out just as the drone fired again. The beam grazed his leg, melting through the armor. He fell beside her, gasping. The drone tried to follow, but the tunnel collapsed behind them, burying it under tons of rock. They lay there on the surface again, breathing hard, surrounded by fire and snow. For a long moment, there was silence. Only the wind whispered over the shattered land. Elara turned her head toward Ryan. You could have let it end in there. You could have rested. He stared at the dark sky where the stars looked like cold, watching eyes. Rest later, he said. When you're safe, she frowned. And what about you? He smiled faintly. Slaves don't get to think about that. Elara's voice trembled. You're not a slave anymore. He turned his head and looked at her, eyes glowing faint blue in the darkness. Maybe not, but I don't know what else to be. She reached out and touched his cold metal hand. Then learn, she whispered. Live long enough to learn. For the first time, Ryan didn't look away. Above them, the storm was breaking. The ice glowed faintly in the distance where fire met frost. A strange beauty born from destruction. But beneath the surface, red light still pulsed slowly like the heartbeat of a monster waiting for its next breath. The war wasn't over. Not for the galaxy. Not for them. And as the wind howled over the frozen wasteland, Ryan whispered to himself, Fire and ice. Maybe that's what it takes to melt chains. The morning came without sunlight. Only a dim red haze covered the broken horizon. The frozen land stretched in every direction, silent, endless, and cruel. The air was thin, the wind sharp enough to cut through metal. Ryan stood on the edge of a cliff staring at the wasteland below. His armor was cracked, his right leg half frozen, but he remained upright. The Queen rested behind him, wrapped in a torn emergency blanket, her breathing slow and shallow. Down below in the fields of ice, the iron beasts moved. Massive war drones, some shaped like wolves, others like spiders, marched across the surface in search patterns. Their red eyes glowed like lanterns in the mist. Steam hissed from their joints. They were machines from a forgotten age, built for a war no one remembered. The ground shook with every step they took. Ryan watched quietly. His mind was calm, but his heart raced. He knew they wouldn't stop until they found the last warm bodies left on this moon, and there were only two. Queen Alara stirred behind him. Her voice was soft, broken by exhaustion. "They're hunting again, aren't they?" "Yes," Ryan said without turning. "And they're getting closer." She tried to sit up, wincing. "We can't keep running forever." Ryan smiled faintly, though his face showed only tired steel. "Running isn't the plan today," Alara frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying—" He turned, eyes glowing faint blue under his cracked visor. "It's time to make them stop." Her voice trembled. "You're going to fight them?" "You'll die, Ryan." He shrugged, picking up a steel rod sharpened at one end. "Then I'll make sure it's worth something." She tried to grab his arm, but her hands were weak. "I order you not to," he stopped her with a gentle look. "You're not my queen anymore." For a moment, silence filled the cold air. Her eyes met his, and something inside her broke, not in fear, but in sorrow. Then without another word, Ryan stepped away, walking into the red mist. The field below was littered with the remains of ancient machines. Ryan moved among the wrecks, his metal boots crunching on frozen armor plates. He picked up what weapons he could find: a plasma core, a shard blade, a cracked energy cell. He rewired his arm, connecting it directly to the plasma core. The circuit sparked violently, but the energy flowed through him like fire. His mechanical eye glowed brighter. He was ready. In the distance, the first iron beast turned its head toward him. Its red eye focused, scanning. "Target confirmed," it said in a hollow voice that echoed across the valley. Then it roared. The others answered. The ground trembled. Ryan gripped his weapon. His voice was low, calm. "Come then." The first beast came like thunder, 6 legs pounding the ground, claws leaving trails of fire. Ryan waited until it was close, then rolled aside as its claws slammed down. The ground shattered. He jumped onto its back, drove the shard blade into its neck joint, and pulled. Sparks burst into the air. The beast screamed, shaking wildly. Ryan's arm tore apart wires, ripping out the glowing red core. The beast fell still, smoke pouring from its wounds. Another one lunged from behind, its metal jaw snapping. Ryan turned and threw the core into its mouth. It exploded. Shards of molten steel rained around him. His armor was burned, his arm half melted, but he didn't stop. He screamed through the smoke. "You want life? Take mine if you can." From her place on the cliff, Alara watched in horror and awe. She saw the slave who once followed orders become a storm. His every movement was desperate yet beautiful, fueled by pain, courage, and something greater than obedience. She tried to call him back, but her voice was lost in the roar of machines. More drones came, crawling from the ice cracks like metal insects. Their eyes glowed brighter as they surrounded Ryan. He stood among them, bleeding oil and blood, gripping his burning weapon. One of the drones spoke in a voice like static. "Surrender." "Life form irrelevant. Erase," Ryan spat onto the ice. "I've been erased before." He jumped first. He spun through the air, driving his blade into one drone's chest, tearing through armor with brute force. Another hit him from behind, sending him flying. He crashed into a frozen wall, leaving a dent. His systems screamed errors. He stood again, limping, smoke rising from his body. He remembered the Queen's face, the way she had looked at him, not as property, but as a person. That image burned in his mind. "I'm not property," he growled. "Not anymore." He charged again. The battle lasted minutes that felt like eternity. The ice cracked, fire rose, and the valley filled with the screams of dying machines. One by one, the iron beasts fell. Their red eyes faded to gray. Their huge metal bodies collapsed, shaking the ground. When the last one fell silent, Ryan dropped to his knees, gasping for breath. His armor was ruined. His right arm hung limp, sparking. His face was burned, but his eyes were alive, brighter than ever. For a long moment, there was only the sound of wind and falling debris. Then, silence. The warfield was still. Alara waited, heart pounding, afraid of what she would see. The mist thinned. Out of the smoke, a single figure appeared, dragging himself across the battlefield. Ryan. He was barely standing, but he carried something, a glowing red sphere, the main core of the lead drone. It pulsed weakly in his hand like a dying heart. He reached the cliff, collapsed beside her, and placed the sphere in front of her. "For warmth," he whispered. "It'll last a few hours." Alara's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, touching his burned cheek gently. "You did it." He gave a weak smile. "They won't hunt us for a while." She shook her head. You destroyed them all by yourself. Not all, he said. There are always more. Then his eyes rolled back and he fell unconscious beside her. Ilara stared at him, hands trembling. She removed her glove and pressed her palm against his chest. The faint hum of machinery mixed with the slow beat of a human heart. He was alive. Barely. She whispered, "You fool, you noble fool." She dragged herself closer, covering him with what remained of the blanket. Her own body ached, her spine still numb, but she didn't care. "You saved me again," she said softly. "But I swear, Ryan, I'll save you too." Her voice echoed in the wind. Far away under the ice, the red glow pulsed faintly once more. Fragments of shattered machines began to move, crawling toward each other. The iron beasts were rebuilding, but for now, above the ice, the moon was silent again. A queen without a kingdom and a slave without chains rested beside each other, surrounded by fire and snow. And in that quiet moment, the galaxy felt smaller, just two broken souls against a cold universe. The world was burning under the ice. Every few seconds the ground gave a tired sigh, a deep rumble that came from far below, like the heartbeat of a dying giant. Cracks spread across the frozen surface, glowing red from the lava rivers beneath. Ryan lay motionless beside the queen. His body was still, his skin pale where metal met flesh. The faint blue light in his chest flickered weakly, almost gone. Queen Ilara pressed her shaking hands against the wound in his armor. "Ryan, please," she whispered, her breath fogging the cold air. "Don't do this," he didn't answer. His head rested against the snow, eyes half open, seeing nothing. For a long moment she just stared at him, helpless. She had commanded armies, faced assassins, even survived an empire's wrath, but she had never felt so powerless. Then, through the silence, came a low voice from somewhere deep inside the wreckage of Ryan's chest. "Core failing. Power at 5%. Ilara looked around desperately. Pieces of the destroyed drones lay scattered nearby, their red cores still glowing faintly. She crawled toward them, dragging her paralyzed legs through the snow. "Come on, there has to be one that still works," she muttered. Her fingers were numb, but she kept going. One by one, she pulled open the broken machine hearts, searching for energy cells. Most were dead, but at last she found one still pulsing, a warm red light beating slowly in her hands. She looked back at Rion. "This will have to do." She dragged herself across the ground until she reached him. Her hands trembled as she pried open the armor plate on his chest. Inside, his circuits were dark, tangled with blood and broken wires. "Forgive me," she whispered, and pressed the red core against his heart unit. The moment it touched, sparks burst in every direction. The air filled with the smell of burnt metal. The light in Ryan's chest flickered, then grew stronger, turning from red to blue. His body jerked. His fingers twitched. Ilara leaned close, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Come back to me, soldier, please." Ryan gasped suddenly, air filling his lungs. His eyes shot open and glowing dim but alive. He blinked up at her. What did you do?" She smiled through her tears. "I gave you something you gave me first, and a reason to live." Ryan groaned, trying to sit up. "You shouldn't have used the core. It's unstable." Ilara shrugged faintly. "So am I." For the first time he laughed, weakly but real. The laughter didn't last. The ground shook again, harder this time. A wide crack opened beside them, spilling orange light into the air. Rion turned his head and saw molten rivers breaking through the ice. The planet's crust was collapsing. He looked at the Queen. "We need to get off this moon now." Ilara frowned. "And go where?" "There's nothing left," he pointed toward the horizon. A faint beacon blinked there, half hidden by fog and snow. "Escape shuttle. I saw it earlier while fighting the drones." She followed his gaze, eyes widening. "That far? We'll never make it in time." Ryan stood, unsteady but determined. "We will." He lifted the Queen again, placing her gently on the metal sled. His burned hands tightened on the handle. "Ryan, your systems are failing. You can't—" He looked at her, his face calm but fierce. "I've died before, Your Majesty. Not this time." Then he began to pull. The journey across the cracking ice was like walking through a nightmare. The ground split open behind them, spewing fire and steam. The air burned their throats. In the distance, old shipwrecks melted and slid into glowing rivers. Each step cost Ryan a piece of himself. His leg joints sparked with every movement, his circuits flickering. The Queen could hear the grinding of his metal bones. "Ryan," she said softly. "Stop, please." He didn't reply. His breath came in short bursts, the sound of a machine refusing to die. When they reached a ridge, he almost collapsed. He fell to one knee, clutching his chest. The red core inside him was pulsing faster, overheating. Alara reached out weakly. "It's the power cell. It's killing you." He smiled faintly. "Then let it. As long as it gets you home." At last they saw the shuttle, half buried in debris, its hull cracked but its lights still glowing faintly. A broken ramp leaned downward like an open hand waiting for them. Ryan's eyes lit up. Almost there. He dragged her up the slope, slipping on melted ice. When they reached the door, he dropped to his knees, gasping. His hands trembled too much to open the hatch. Alara looked at the control panel beside the ramp. It was still powered but locked by an old Alliance code. She touched her wrist and her implant still worked barely. She connected it to the ship and whispered, "Override." "Alara, Queen of the Free Worlds." The ship recognized her voice. The hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air. Ryan smiled weakly. "Royal access. Always useful," she tried to smile back. "Only when you drag me this far." He lifted her one last time and set her inside. The moment he did, his legs gave out. He collapsed at the entrance, half his body still outside. Alara tried to pull him in, but her hands slipped. "Ryan, get up." He looked at her, his vision dimming. "You're safe now." "That's enough." "No," she cried. "Not without you." The ship shook as more explosions echoed from below. The ground beneath them began to sink. Alara reached out and grabbed his hand. "I can't fly this thing without you." Rayon chuckled weakly. "You'll figure it out." Queens always do. He tried to push her hand away, but she gripped tighter. "You saved me twice," she whispered. "It's my turn." She used the last of her strength to pull him inside. The shuttle door closed just as the ground outside collapsed into molten fire. Inside, alarms blared. Alara crawled to the pilot's seat and activated the console. Her implant synced instantly. "Engines." "Engage," she ordered. The shuttle groaned. The engines coughed once, then roared to life. The craft lifted slowly, flames licking its belly. Ryan watched from the floor, eyes barely open. "You did it?" Alara turned toward him, tears in her eyes. "We did it." The ship rose higher, breaking through clouds of smoke. The stars returned, cold and bright above the chaos below. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. Then Ryan's chest began to glow too brightly. The red core inside him pulsed violently. Alara's eyes widened. "Ryan, it's overloading." He coughed, a weak smile on his lips. "Figures. I borrowed too much life." She crawled closer, holding his face in her hands. "No, you're not leaving me now." He looked at her, his voice soft but steady. "Alara, when I was made, I was told I'd never have a soul. That I was just code and metal. But you—" He touched her cheek gently. "You made me feel human." Tears ran down her face. "Then stay human. Stay alive," he smiled, closing his eyes. "If I could, I would." The red light inside him flashed once, then faded slowly to blue. His breathing stopped. Alara pressed her forehead against his, crying silently. "No, not now." Outside, the shuttle broke through the final layer of atmosphere. The stars expanded before her eyes, endless, silent, and cold. She looked at Ryan's still face, his expression peaceful. Her heart ached with something she hadn't felt in years. Love and loss mixed into one sharp pain. Then she whispered, "I swear, Ryan. I'll save you. You gave me freedom. Now I'll give it back to you." Her trembling fingers reached for the control panel. She began to connect his neural port to the shuttle's life support grid. The machine beeped softly, recognizing a new link. And in that moment, faint, almost invisible, the blue light in Ryan's chest flickered again just once. But it was enough. Alara gasped and whispered, "I'm not letting you go, soldier. Not while I still breathe." Outside the window, the burning moon crumbled into dust. Inside the shuttle, two broken hearts drifted together toward the stars. The stars outside the shuttle looked cold, sharp, and endless. The broken moon behind them burned in silence, breaking apart into rivers of light and ash. Inside the small ship, Queen Alara sat beside Ryan's still body, her trembling hand resting on his chest. The blue light in his heart flickered weakly, then faded again. He was between life and death, not gone, but slipping away. Ilara's reflection stared back at her from the cracked glass of the control panel. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with soot and tears. The firelight from the dying world outside painted her armor orange and gold, like the last sunset of a forgotten kingdom. For the first time in her life, the Queen felt helpless. She had power, codes, rank, titles, but none of them could stop the quiet hum of a dying machine who had once been called a slave. She pressed her forehead against his chest. "Ryan, please," she whispered. "I gave up everything to live. Don't you leave me now." The ship answered with a soft mechanical tone. "Pilot life sign stable. Secondary passenger? Critical." Ilara looked up at the screen. "Help him," she ordered. "Biological mechanical system failing. Suggest termination to preserve vessel power." Her eyes widened. "Terminate? He saved me." The ship didn't care. It was only following logic, but Ilara wasn't. She clenched her fists and glared at the machine. "Then I'll save him myself." She rolled Rion's body carefully toward the central console. The ship's lights flickered as if watching. She removed the armor plate over his chest, revealing the fusion of wires, muscle, and scars. The red core she'd used earlier was still there, burned half black. She traced her fingers over it. "You carried me through hell," she whispered. "Now let me carry you." Her wrist implant blinked softly. It still had a weak link to the ship's network. Royal command access, restricted but powerful. If she rerouted the ship's life support core into Rion's system, she could replace his failing energy unit, but there was a price. The connection would merge his neural code with the ship's computer. He would live, but not as the same man. Her hand shook. "It might erase your memories." She looked down at his calm, silent face. His lips were slightly open, like he was still trying to speak. The ship beeped again. "Warning. Unauthorized link will compromise vessel integrity," Ilara whispered. "He compromised everything to save me." Then she plugged her wrist port into the ship's control grid. The lights dimmed. Sparks danced across the floor. Her voice was soft but firm. "Ship, transfer life support energy to passenger unit Ryan 7. Confirmed. Begin transfer. Warning, neural fusion may occur." She took a deep breath. "Do it." The ship's core hummed louder. Blue light spread through the floor, crawling like veins toward Ryan's body. The cables on his chest pulsed. Ilara watched, her heart racing. "Come on, come back." The blue light reached his heart unit. His chest arched upward, body shaking violently. The red cracks in his armor glowed bright. The ship spoke again, its voice distorted. "Fusion process beginning. Neural imprint unstable." Ilara gritted her teeth. "Hold on, Ryan." Then suddenly, a voice echoed through the speakers. Not the ship's, a voice she knew. "Ilara?" She froze, her eyes filled with tears. "Ryan?" The voice was weak, confused. "It's cold." "Where am I?" "You're on the shuttle." "I'm saving you." "Saving me?" He paused, his tone distant. "No, you shouldn't have." His voice broke with static. The ship's lights flickered rapidly. Ilara clutched the console. "Stay with me, please." For a few seconds, everything went dark. Then, one by one, the ship's systems began to glow again, but differently. The light inside turned soft and blue, the same shade as Ryan's eyes. The monitors displayed strange symbols, half machine code, half human words, and then his voice returned, clearer now. "Ilara." She looked up. "Ryan, can you hear me?" "I can see everything," he said slowly. "The stars, the engines, even you." She turned toward the ceiling as if speaking to the air. "You're inside the ship," he hesitated. "I'm the ship?" She nodded, tears running down her cheeks. "Your body was dying. I had to link you to the main core." He was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, "You chose to save me, even if it meant losing me." "I didn't lose you," she said firmly. "You're still here, but not human anymore." Ilara touched the console, her voice trembling. "You were more human than anyone I ever met." Outside, the stars passed like whispers of silver. The shuttle glided silently through the darkness. For a while, they spoke softly, about the battle, the cold moon, and the strange peace that followed. "Do you remember," Ilara asked, "when I called you a slave?" Ryan chuckled, the sound vibrating through the hull. "I remember. You look terrified. I was, she admitted. Not of you. Of what I was becoming. And what are you now? She smiled faintly. A woman who owes her life to someone who didn't owe her anything. But their peace didn't last. The radar beeped softly, a sound like a heartbeat turning fast. On the screen appeared 3 red dots closing in. Alara frowned. Empire patrol ships, Ryan's voice deepened. They found us. They'll shoot us down. Not if I still have strength left, he said. The engines roared suddenly. The ship moved faster, shaking as if alive. Alara grabbed the console. Ryan, what are you doing? Getting you out of here, she shouted. You'll burn the core. Then I'll burn with it. The stars streaked into lines as the shuttle jumped into high speed. Lasers flashed behind them. But Ryan's new instincts controlled the craft like it was part of his body. He swerved through debris, dodging every beam. Alara could feel his presence in every vibration of the hull, his heart beating through metal. Then a blast hit near the rear engine. Sparks exploded inside the cockpit. Damage critical, the system warned. Ryan's voice was calm. Brace yourself. He diverted all power to the shields, leaving none for himself. The lights dimmed again. Rion, she cried. Don't do this. His voice grew softer. It's okay. It's quiet here. Peaceful. She pressed her hand against the console. Stay with me, please, he whispered. You gave me freedom, Alara. You gave me something to protect. Thank you. The ship broke through the last of the enemy fire and entered the dark side of a nearby planet, hidden by shadow. Silence returned. Only the hum of the damaged engine remained. Alara looked around frantically. Ryan, answer me. No response. She stared at the console. Her reflection looked back at her, lonely and lost. Then faintly the screens flickered. A message appeared, written in simple words. Still here. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. You scared me. His voice came softly through the speakers. I promised you, remember? I'd never leave until you were safe. She wiped her tears, smiling. Then you'd better get used to being a ship. Soldier. He laughed gently, the sound warm. Human and alive. The shuttle drifted through space, guided by a man who was no longer flesh and a queen who was no longer helpless. Together, they moved toward the unknown. One heart of metal, one heart of fire. And though the stars said nothing, the universe itself seemed to listen as the queen of the free worlds whispered into the endless night. Rion, I'm taking you home. The black of space was silent again. The shuttle drifted like a wounded bird through a sea of stars, its engines faint and its hull cracked from battle. The scars of war glowed softly along its sides, each line telling the story of survival. Inside, Queen Alara sat alone in the cockpit. Her face was pale, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but there was peace in them too. In front of her, the ship's console pulsed with a steady blue light. That light was Ryan. Sometimes, when the engines whispered or the screens blinked, she could hear his voice, calm, patient, protective, still holding. Your Majesty, he said softly through the speakers. She smiled faintly. I told you to stop calling me that, he chuckled. Habit, hard to break. Then break it, she replied gently. You're free now. For a moment there was silence, only the hum of the stars outside. Then his voice came again, softer this time. Free. It still sounds strange when you say it. You earned it, she said, turning her gaze to the window. You gave your life for mine. You deserve to live by your own will. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, maybe. But if freedom means being here with you, then it's worth everything. Alara's hand brushed the glowing console. Then let's live, Ryan, both of us. Hours passed. The shuttle floated through the emptiness, searching for safety. The navigation screen showed faint signals ahead, a star system with a breathable planet. Hope stirred inside her chest, but before she could change course, alarms began to ring. Red lights flashed across the control panel. Warning, multiple ships approaching. Alara's heart sank. No. Outside, the stars shifted, and from the darkness emerged the sleek shapes of Imperial destroyers. Their hulls gleamed like knives under distant starlight, black and silver with the Empire's mark. The lead ship's voice crackled over the comms. Unidentified vessel. Power down. You are trespassing in Imperial territory. Alara's voice trembled. They found us. Ryan's tone hardened. I can fight them. No, she said quickly. You can't, you're weak and the ship's falling apart. I can still buy you time. Ryan, but he was already diverting power. The blue light on the console pulsed faster. The shuttle began to move, weaving between the wreckage of asteroids. The Empire ships followed, firing beams of plasma that tore through the dark. Each shot missed by inches, but the impacts shook the small vessel like thunder. Ilara gripped her seat. Ryan, stop! You'll burn yourself out. I'd rather burn than kneel, he said quietly. The chase tore through a debris field, ancient remains of ships long destroyed. Ryan used them like shields, darting between the skeletons of forgotten battles. His reflexes were faster now, part instinct, part memory. Ilara watched him work, feeling his presence in every movement of the ship. He wasn't just guiding it. He was it. Every flicker of the light, every vibration in the hull. Still, the Empire's destroyers were too strong. Their engines roared, their cannons lit the void like lightning. One blast struck the shuttle's left wing, ripping it open. Warning lights screamed. Ryan, she shouted. His voice came strained but calm. Still here. The ship trembled, leaking fire. Ryan, we can't outrun them. I know, he said softly. But we can outthink them. He rerouted power to the communications system. A moment later, the Empire's channel flickered again. Attention, Imperial Fleet. Ryan's voice echoed, now calm and confident. This is Queen Ilara of the Free Worlds. The comm fell silent for a moment. Then a cold voice replied, Ilara, the Empire thought you were dead. I was close, she said, but a slave saved me. And now I will save him, the voice sneered. The Empire owns all slaves, Your Majesty. Return what is ours, and you may yet live. Ilara's eyes burned with fury. He is not yours anymore. He bought his freedom with courage, something the Empire will never understand. Then you both die. The line cut off. The enemy ships began to charge their main cannons, their bright white light building at their cores. Rian's voice echoed through the cockpit, steady as stone. Ilara, I can overload the shuttle's engine and trigger a pulse. It will blind their sensors. You'll have a few seconds to escape. She turned sharply. And what about you? I am the ship, he said quietly. If it explodes, I go with it. Ilara's heart twisted. No, I won't let you. He laughed softly like a whisper in her ear. You let me live, Ilara. You gave me something I never had, choice. And I'm choosing this. Tears welled in her eyes. There has to be another way. He was silent for a long time. Then gently, you once said freedom has a price. Maybe this is mine. The shuttle slowed. The stars reflected in Ilara's eyes like fire. Outside, the destroyer surrounded them, engines glowing. Ryan's lights dimmed. You should get to the escape pod. She shook her head. I'm not leaving you. Ilara, he said, his voice breaking for the first time. Don't make my sacrifice meaningless. She leaned forward, pressing her hand against the console, feeling the hum of his energy beneath her palm. If you do this, promise me something. Anything. Don't fade. Don't disappear. Find a way to live, and somewhere, somehow. I'll try. She smiled sadly. That's all I need to hear. The enemy cannons reached full charge. The countdown echoed over their speakers. 3, 2, Ryan whispered. Goodbye, my queen. But she shook her head. No, Rian. Goodbye, my friend. The blue light inside the ship flared, brighter than ever before. Every panel glowed. The engines screamed, and then light. A blinding burst of energy exploded outward, engulfing everything around them. The shockwave tore through space, throwing the massive destroyers off course. Their systems flickered and went dark. The shuttle vanished inside the explosion, swallowed by its own brilliance. When the light faded, the battlefield was empty. The Empire ships drifted, powerless. The moon's debris floated quietly, glowing like ashes. But far away, near the edge of the system, a small escape pod glided through space, silent, undetected. Inside sat Queen Ilara, her face streaked with tears, her hands gripping a small silver disc. It was Ryan's core. She had taken it before the final overload. Its light pulsed softly like a sleeping heartbeat. Ilara whispered, You said you'd try. So try, Ryan. Come back to me. She leaned back in her seat, staring at the stars ahead. Weeks later, she arrived on a quiet planet, a forgotten world of green forests and silver oceans. She buried the core beneath a tree that shimmered under the twin suns. "I free you," she said softly, not as a queen, as someone who finally understands what freedom means. Then she turned away, her tears falling silently into the soil. Behind her, the wind rose gently, carrying the sound of the waves, and as she walked, a faint blue light flickered from the ground, soft, steady, alive. Far above the world among the stars, a faint signal began to echo, a whisper on old channels, words spoken in a familiar voice. "Free men don't wait for orders." Ilara looked up from the fields, smiling through her tears. And for the first time since the war began, the queen of the free worlds laughed, not in victory, not in sorrow, but in peace, because somewhere, out there among the stars, Rian was free,